Hi everyone, welcome and thank you for joining us today. My name is Jean, the Digital Event Coordinator at Connecting Up and TechSoup New Zealand. We are part of the Info Exchange Group, a not-for-profit social enterprise that tackles the biggest social challenges by creating use of technology. Today, I'm very excited to welcome you to join the Introduction to Azure 2022 with Alex and Nick. They are both the System Engineering at IT Team Limited. So later on, Alex and Nick will be introducing themselves so that you have a better know about them. Before we begin, we'll start with a bit of housekeeping. All lines are muted. If you have any technical issues, please type into the questions box and I'll be here to assist you. If you have any questions during the webinar, please also type into the questions box and Nick, Alex will get an answer by the end of the webinar or sometimes during the webinars. We really encourage you to ask as many questions as possible. Please note that your questions and your comments will not be appear to the entire group. Please also note that the webinar is being recorded. The recording deck and the slides will be sent to you in 1 to 2 business days. Finally, I would like to remind you there's a short survey at the end. Please help us to complete that for even better experience in the future. All right, now I'll pass on to Alex and Nick for today's section. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Yep, so I'm Alex from the IT team. I've been a systems engineer for about 7 years there. And yeah, I've got quite a bit of experience in working with NGOs and NFBs in this space, Azure and anything IT related. And I'll pass you over to Nick. Do you want to just introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Nick. I've been at the IT team for almost 4 years. I'm now a systems engineer and I've been helping drive the cloud and security space at the IT team and hopefully for many more years to come.
Yeah, so I hope everyone gets a lot out of this webinar. Please ask questions throughout, although we do have a dedicated spot for question and answers at the end. So if we don't answer in the presentation, we'll try to get to it at the end of it. So briefly, what we're going to cover today. So hopefully we're going to cover what is Microsoft Azure, how can Azure help my organization, answer the question of will you still need a local server. We'll try to give you some real world examples of how other not-for-profits have used Azure in the real world, in real life. Give you some kind of indication of how much Azure costs and help you work that out and price things out, should you decide to go with it. You might be aware, if you're a not-for-profit, you get access to a grant given by Microsoft, some free credit to use on it. So we'll give you a quick run down an example of how to access that. We'll talk a little bit about what is required to keep using Azure going forwards after you've implemented your project. We'll look at a real quick case study and then look at a few other considerations that you may need to think about before you press the go button if you decide to move to Azure. Just quickly, a little bit about the IT team. So we're formed in 2011 in Christchurch, New Zealand, after the earthquakes. And because of the earthquakes in Christchurch and the CBD, a lot of people had servers and the like trapped in their buildings so they couldn't get to the data. And of course, it was offline since the power was cut. So when we were formed, we decided to be formed as cloud only. So we are fully cloud centric internally, and we try to help our customers with that also. So we're a managed services provider, IT support company. So we've got a service desk and we manage the company's IT to make sure it's secure, fast, and does what it needs to do. So yeah, we offer a wide range of IT services, internet, phone, etc., etc. Everything you can think about that. It's got electricity, except for coffee machines. Don't do that. We've got many not-for-profit customers, social enterprises, non-government agencies, organizations, that kind of thing. And we really enjoy working with NFPs. And yeah, we provide services to New Zealand and Australian organizations. So what is Microsoft Azure? It's kind of hard because it's a kind of a nebulous concept, but Azure is a cloud computing platform, which means it's a collection of services that companies, organizations, even individuals can use to improve their IT strategy and infrastructure and day-to-day. And it is a really, really big list. So I'll quickly show you. Hopefully everyone can see this web page. This is Microsoft Azure, so it's a website that you go to, azure.com. And this is just a few examples of the services that it offers. Yeah, I think there's over 200 in total. In this presentation, we're probably only going to look at 2 or 3 of the most important ones for getting started, I guess, but you can do a lot. So that's what it is in a conceptual form. Let's look at some pretty pictures. An important thing when you're starting to think about Azure and other kinds of cloud computing is the concepts of SaaS, PaaS, and IaaS, which stands for Software as a Service, Platform as a Service, and Infrastructure as a Service. You may have heard these before, you may not have. And sorry that they're overly technical jargon and initialisms, but it's really important to get your head around what Azure is. So these words basically means who looks after what. So Microsoft Azure can do all 3, but primarily they focus on these 2. So PaaS and IaaS. Now IaaS is all about the infrastructure. Infrastructure really just means like physical servers, networking equipment, wires, electricity, air conditioning for the servers, all that kind of stuff, the nuts and bolts of the computer. So it means rather than you buying a server and putting it in the corner, they take care of all of that, and you just get a login to the server to do and run whatever the business applications and stuff are needed. Next is PaaS, which is Platform as Service. This is a step further than just providing you a server login. They actually don't show you the server operating system. They just give you a place where you can run your applications. So you might say, here's a database, and they just give you a database, and you don't need to worry about Microsoft Windows Server. You don't need to worry about the physical hands-on server or anything. It's simply a database you can use. And Software as a Service is anything that you don't even need to worry about servers or databases or anything like that. It's simply a service that you pay money for and use. So some examples of Software as a Service would be Dropbox. So it's just a website you go to. Office 365 is Software as a Service. And so your emails, you click on, you get your emails. Everything is still here under the hood, but you can't see it or interact with it. It's all done for you. So if we were to think about that, here's a traditional on-site server kind of layout. And this may be what you've got at the moment, I'm not sure. So if you've got a server sitting in the corner, it would look somewhere along like this. You've got your hardware, so that's the physical box sitting in the corner gathering dust, and you're responsible for that. If something dies, you have to get the IT guys in to fix it, and the downtime will be there as well. If the part fails, you need to call in the warranty and get the part replaced. Or if the building burns down, then you have to get a new server and set it up. Next up is virtualization, which is if you're running multiple servers on one piece of hardware. So you've got one box in the corner, but 3 servers running on top of it. You have to manage that. You also have to manage the operating system, so making sure Windows kept up to date and all that. Patched and secure, running antivirus, that kind of thing. You have to look after the network. So in your building, you've probably got some internet connection. You'll have a router, cables going to the server, that kind of thing. You have to keep that network secure, so you need to have a firewall, and you need to manage that yourself. You'll have data sitting on the server, so that's your files and all that kind of thing. And then finally, you may have some applications like a client database or a customer database or something like that. And you or your IT provider that you pay has to manage all that, which is actually a rather expensive exercise to do and risky because it's sitting in your office or maybe in a local data center. Where Azure steps in at the base level, what they can offer, and this is like where most people start dipping their toes into Azure, is they offer all of the top level stuff you have to look after, but they take away the hardware and the virtualization, which means it's just running there happily in the cloud, little cloud, but you don't have to worry about the physical servers or the virtualization. That's all taken care of by Azure. And at the next layer is the cloud services. And this is where you can like run a virtual database or an application directly in the cloud, and you don't need to worry about the operating system. It's really nice if you can get this working because it's one less thing to worry about. You don't need to worry about updates, and you don't need to worry about server logins or anything like that. And then going forwards, it offers more and more things. Like, for instance, if you're hosting a website, yes, you could host the website on the server box in your office, or you could host it on a virtual machine, or you could host the individual parts that make the website work. But it's easier just to say and give it to Azure and say, hi, I want to run a website, and they'll make you a blank empty website, and you just add the details, and you don't need to worry about any of the networking, any of the operating systems, or any of the physical machines. And yeah, so that's kind of the span of what they offer. We'll give some examples in a minute because I know this is very theoretical and it can be hard to get your head around. So just a quick bit on Microsoft Azure. It's very secure. They spend, I think, over $1 billion a year on security and checking to make sure that the bad guys can't get in. I certainly don't know of any enterprise that we've worked with that spends $1 billion on security. So Microsoft is probably going to be better than what anyone else can do. Scalability. This means that if you want a server in the cloud, like let's say you're running a website and you become really popular for whatever reason and you need to increase the resource on it so it doesn't crash or go slow, with Microsoft Azure, you just press a button and it will get more for a price, obviously. That's something you can't do if you're running your own hardware. You have to go buy a new server, set it up, and maybe in 4 weeks' time or 2 months' time, you'll have more scale. Azure is pretty much instant. Worldwide access, so I'll talk a little bit about this in the next slide, but Azure is truly global. Azure's got a hybrid capacity where you can run local servers and servers in Azure and have them talk to each other, which can be very useful in some applications. It's also very flexible, so you can turn servers on and off as you want them. So where is Azure? Well, the good thing is it's everywhere. There's over 60 regions, and the ones that are important for us down in the bottom of the world, I think there's 3 regions in Australia. So we've got Australia Central, Australia Southeast, and Australia East. Of the 3, Australia East is in New South Wales, and it's the biggest, and it's got 3 data centers within New South Wales that all talk to each other. And if you want, you can make your application be on multiple ones in New South Wales. So if one physical place gets, goes offline, the other 2 will pick up the slack. And in New Zealand, there's going to be a New Zealand North, so somewhere over here. Don't know an exact date or time for you, but there are a lot of big customers that are signing on to that already, which would be great for all the New Zealand companies. So watch this space or keep your eye on the news and you'll see when that's happening. Nick, do you want to just talk a little bit about what some common uses we have for NGOs and NFPs in Azure?
Certainly. So there's quite a few common uses, and you probably already see quite a few different things you might be using on-premise or in your building. One example, which is pretty common, is a domain controller where it has all your usernames and groups and potentially distribution lists all sorted. That can be lifted up into Azure. You could also have a file server that you have different mapped drives that can be lifted up as well, which is pretty standard, really. You might also have a remote desktop services server where you have a bunch of applications stored on a virtual server and you get people to log in remotely from home or from the office. And of course, that can be combined with your DCs and domain controllers and file servers. Azure Site Recovery is pretty cool. It's a backup service that allows you to automatically fail over your servers into the Azure cloud very, very quickly, which is pretty nice to have. It's a bit hard to do a DR or disaster recovery quickly on-prem sometimes. Having it ready and available is really key. Azure Backup is pretty common, and we use it all the time, and we restore from it all the time, which is really good. So having an easy access to Azure Backup and being able to restore files or even a whole server back to a previous state is pretty common, and it's really easy in Azure. You might have an application server, of course. Maybe you've got a database or an app that you use to put in data. records. You might update some client information. That can also be lifted, which is awesome, which is becoming really, really common. We could also have a phone server in Azure. We actually sell quite a few different phone servers using the 3CX software, and that can be lifted into the cloud. It doesn't have to be on-prem. It doesn't have to be in your office, which is really cool, and it can just happen really quickly with Azure, which is great. You can also move your website. That's pretty common. You might have that on-prem because it's easier and cheaper. We have some information on that. And of course, Azure Files is pretty common nowadays. That can be basically a file share that's shared from Azure and connected directly to your computer. Cool, thanks, Alex. How much does it cost? Well, it depends, and it's actually pretty easy to predict. So it can be consumed per minute and billed per month, which is really good. So it's not fixed. You don't have to kind of pay for an entire year upfront kind of thing. It is very predictable, and you can reserve your instances or your virtual machines for up to 3 years. So you can make sure you get some really low rates and really predictable billing. You do have to factor in some bandwidth charges of Azure machines kind of sending data outside or trying to access resources from outside of Azure. So they need to be factored in, but it is generally cheaper when you factor in all the consumption than the local data centers here in New Zealand and Australia. So you can actually beat some of the rates that you get with some of the smaller providers due to economies of scale. And yeah, of course, it often is more economical than on-premise hardware. We're spending, say, $5,000 or $10,000 all at once. Essentially, it's much cheaper when you have Azure manage a lot of it for you, so you don't have to pay for all those other odd costs like a UPS kind of thing.
Perfect.
Cool.
So would you still need a local server if you were to move all your servers that's running in the corner into Azure? Well, it depends, is really the answer, and everyone's situation is unique. So you can run a hybrid mode where you keep a couple servers locally and then have all the heavy lifting happening in Azure. And in some cases, that is very useful. So you could have a file server on site locally and then have it syncing with Azure Files. That's an option. Or you may have a domain controller in the cloud and a domain controller at each of your sites if you've got multiple, if you need a domain controller. Some people are just more comfortable with local, especially if you're in the middle of nowhere and you've got no good internet connection, which is the next one, internet performance. In that case, you may be good for local. But these days, the internet is getting better and better wherever we are, so that's less and less of an issue and will keep going to be less of an issue. If you've got significant storage requirements and you're moving a lot of data around, that could be a reason to keep servers locally. But we're talking these days a lot of data. We're not talking about a few terabyte. We're talking about, you're a movie production company and you've got lots of raw video files that you need access to. Then maybe working locally is a bit better. But for most people, where it's Word documents in an Excel, then yeah, Azure is where you want to go. Sometimes the core application that you run for your business, so a customer database or something, could be old and can't really be touched for fear of breaking it, or maybe it just doesn't like running over the internet. It really depends on an application by application basis. In that case, it's probably best that you start looking at a new application that does support it in the long run, because if your current situation was to have a problem, it would be pretty bad for your organization. But yeah, sometimes that can be a reason why you'd need a local server. If you're a design or architectural firm that does a lot of CAD or computer-aided design, sometimes they don't play nice with the extra time delay running onto Azure. And yeah, some of the legacy systems and licensing costs, it's just too expensive to move things around. And lastly, CapEx preference, if you want to spend all the money up front, or if you'd rather spread it over month to month. Month to month is definitely where Azure is aligned, but some of the pricing you can actually pay up front and then have it for 3 years or whatever. So what ongoing management would you need if you were just moving servers up into the cloud, into Azure? You'd still need some IT assistance ongoing. It is rather technical in the back end. There isn't any physical maintenance to worry about though, because there's no physical server running on in the back, so you don't need to upgrade the machines ever. That's kind of done for you. If you're running servers, they still do need monitoring and maintenance, so patching and antivirus, that kind of thing. You still need backups, and they still need to be monitored and tested to check they're working, unfortunately, although the risk of something going wrong is lessened by being in Azure. Yeah, I don't think you'd find any IT person that says you don't need backups. You do. You need the finance team to be on top of it and just check the billing costs, which is a new thing, I guess, just to check that nothing's gone wrong. And yeah, just knowing that new things are coming along all the time in the space, new technologies and new ways of working, where you can slowly get rid of servers and move them onto software as a service platforms or onto other offerings, and you won't need servers anymore. So just to keep up to date with it, check that you're running the latest tech. So all these things are still needed, unfortunately, if you're moving to Azure, or fortunately. Someone's looking at it. Do you want to talk a bit about infrastructure as a service, Nick?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, thanks, Alex. So infrastructure as a service, or IaaS, is probably the most common use of Azure, especially when you're starting to adopt Azure services. You'll probably expand later on, but it's generally where people start. There are preset plans or kind of compute resources that you can you choose when you start. You can't kind of pick and choose. I need 8 gig of RAM or like 8 gigabytes, 512 gig of memory. You can't say I need it specifically, 2.5 gigahertz for your CPU, but you can get quite a lot of different plans. There's hundreds, and they do differ per region, and they're always upgrading them. There are also GPU or graphics card plans that you can include CAD design work on. So you can actually go and do high GPU loads in the cloud, which is really cool. And of course, it's infrastructure as a service. It's all done for you.
Thank you. So just looking at a few examples of the costs, these costs may have changed since we made the slide, but I'll show you how you can calculate how much things cost. But just as an example, if you're running a phone server in Azure, so this would be where you ring up an organization and it says, hello, you've reached blah, blah, blah. Press 1 to go to the accounts team, press 2 to go to this extension, and running all the extensions. So we're just using 3CX as an example of one of these. If you run it in Azure, just as a pay as you go, so month to month, but you can cancel any time kind of service, you're going to be looking at around $30 a month. And then if you say, well, we're going to be using the system for the next 1 or 3 years, then you can reserve the instance. And that basically is a commitment to keep having that service for 1 or 3 years. And you can see the monthly cost dials down. If you were to look at running like a domain controller, so this is running if your sign-ins and stuff for your computer. The prices are higher because it's a higher spec computer. And this is probably about the lowest you can actually reasonably go. And also the Windows licensing cost is included in that. So that's why the price is higher. And once again, the price drops down if you reserve it for longer. And if you wanted to run a domain controller and store some files on it, which is quite a common thing we see in NGOs, then the prices go up again as you add in the hard drives. So this one here has got a 500 gigabyte hard drive for storage, and then you've got some cost there for backup, and then you've got some cost there for traffic. And then finally, a bigger one, if you were running a domain controller server and a remote desktop server, then you can see that the prices go up because you're running 2 servers. And you've also got to factor in the licensing costs for connecting into the remote desktop server. That's only 1 user, so you'd need to multiply that by the number of users that were logging in. And yeah, you've got some backup costs here as well. which would vary depending on the amount of data you have. And if you need to run a database, you could add a database server. So here's the price just for the database server. You'd need to include a domain controller or a file server on top. And SQL licenses can be expensive, so there are different versions of SQL you can run to help reduce the cost somewhat. And I will show you how you can calculate the price in a second with the Azure pricing calculator. But before we do that, if you want to just quickly talk about, oh no, I'm talking about this. Azure Site Recovery is something that could be very useful for your organization. So this is where you may have servers running at the moment in your office or in a data center, and you can run Azure Site Recovery to back them up into Azure. They're turned off in Azure. They're replicating pretty frequently, but they're just sitting there ready for you to turn on should something happen to your local premise. So this is a very good first step. I have seen it used as a transition method where you just turn them on in Azure after it's all replicated up there and turn off the on-site, reconfigure a little bit of networking, and away you go. All your servers are in the cloud. So this is a very, and it's also not too expensive. I think it's $25 per server plus some storage costs, because you're not actually paying for the resource unless you turn it on. Nick, do you want to talk about Azure Backup?
Yeah, sure thing. So Azure Backup's pretty key at the IT team. We often do file restores because someone's gone and deleted something. Being able to restore that is really critical, and it's actually really easy. It's easier than a lot of on-premise file backup systems we've used in the past. It's really simple. It's possible to do image-based backup to Azure directly, so you can kind of restore an image of a server. There are extensive retention options. You can do all the way back, for multiple months or even years. And of course, you can have it automatically clean up and get rid of any data that you don't need to be backing up anymore. But the key thing, honestly, for Azure Backup is being able to restore files really quickly and painlessly all through a web interface. I don't know how many times I've tried to restore files from Veeam or I guess any other backup software, and it's been a mission.
Thanks for that, Nick. So the Azure pricing calculator, let me just open this up now. So this is freely available to everyone. Just go to azure.microsoft.com. There's the address. I think it's in the slide deck as well. Just Google Azure pricing calculator and you'll get this page here. And this lets you just choose various services from the same catalog that we're looking at before, and it will tell you how much it costs. So if we were to click on virtual machine, click on it, and it's going to add a new virtual machine down here. And then you can configure everything and it will tell you how much it's going to cost. First of all, we'll just scroll down to the bottom, change it from US dollars into Australian dollars. It will tell you the currency conversion rate it's using. And then we just go through and we can set it up. So we set where we want the virtual machine to be running. In this case, let's go Australia East. We want it to be running Windows, although you can choose between Windows and Linux. OS, if you wanted it to be an SQL server, you can pick that and it bumps the price up a lot. Leaves tier as standard, and then you get to choose what kind of machine you want, and there's a massive list. There's some predetermined categories here, so if you know you need a specific type of server, you can, or you can just pick from the list of all of them. The B series are burstable, which basically means they run at a minimum slow state until you need them, and then for a short period of time they can use the full power of them, whereas the other series like the A series or the D series of machines, they'll be running at full speed all the time. So you can just pick one, like an A4 or maybe A2, and it tells you how much it costs per hour. Then, oops, sorry, that's emails popping up. You can pick how many of them you need and how many hours per month you think you're going to be running them for. I think 730 hours is roughly a month. So if you were to turn the machine off, the price would come down if you would like to turn it off at night, say, and turn it back on. There's the options for the reserved instance. So if I suddenly go 3-year reserved instance, it lets me. I don't think I can for that type.
might depend on the region and also the machine that you're trying to get.
Machine type, yeah. So if I go 3-year reserved instance on this B, you can see the price goes from $17 a month to $9 a month. So there's big savings there. Licensing, so if you want all the licensing to be taken care of by Microsoft, you just tick that box. Or if you've got licenses elsewhere, you can tick that box and it brings the price down even further. In fact, it nearly halves it. So that's how much licensing costs. Managed disks is an important thing not to forget. How many hard drives do you want? You can have solid state drives, hard drives, and how big you want, all the way up to 32 terabyte. 32 terabyte. And you can say, I want one of them. And as you can see, the price jumps up a lot. How many storage transactions you're going to use? This can be difficult to work out. You probably need to talk to your IT provider to get you a good number for that. And finally, bandwidth. You don't pay for putting money into Azure, but you do for getting it out. I think the first 5 gigabytes is free from any server, but then beyond that, it costs money. So let's say you think people are going to be using 100 gig a month. That's $10 for bandwidth. And there you go. That gives you your monthly price. So this is for a 32 gig SSD, 32 terabyte SSD. So obviously there's a lot of money on the hard drive space. If we put that something a little bit more reasonable, yeah, that tells you how much it is per month for a small server with a small hard drive and 100 gig of bandwidth. And you can use this for anything. That's obviously for a virtual machine. But if you were to say want to run some storage account, or if you want to do backups, you can work out Azure Backup, and it's going to tell you how much it is to back up a machine, much in the same way. So yeah, pretty much everything can be priced, and you just type in how long you want to keep the backups for, and you know the kind of questions it needs to, and it'll give you an estimate at the end. Yeah, so that's how to use the pricing calculator. Back to the presentation. We have a look at a quick case study, an example of a not-for-profit using Azure. So we'd have a customer A who's currently got 3 physical servers running on site. They've got a domain controller that has all the user logins. They've got a file server with all the users' files, and they've got an application server running a customer database. Importantly, the application needs to be running on a server. So it's not something you can just install on someone's computer. It needs to be running on a server because everyone needs to access it. The customer's looked into other options like SharePoint, which would mean they wouldn't need a file server. But unfortunately, there's the application needs to be able to see the files right next to it. It can't be running in SharePoint yet. And they're considering replacing their on-site servers and having to pay money to buy new servers and install new operating systems and all that, or if they'll just get rid of everything that's sitting in the corner and putting it into Azure. So here's what it could look like if you were to put it into Azure. You've got the head office here with all the laptops and desktops, and between that head office and in Azure there's a secure VPN. You could also have a secure VPN running to the laptops as well if they're working from home. And then sitting in Azure, you'd have the domain controller and the SQL server running the application in Azure in this nice box. You've got Azure Backups running there as well. So all the files there are going into the backups, nice in the cloud. You don't need to worry about them. No hard drive in the back of the server anymore. It's all in the cloud. And then you've got a sync between the domain controller there and all the Microsoft services like your email, Office 365, OneDrive, SharePoint, and that kind of thing. So that way people on mobile devices can directly go and get Exchange or SharePoint or OneDrive without needing to be in the office. So this is just a pretty typical example of the kind of setup you could go when you're first moving to the cloud. These days, a lot of the time it's actually moving away from this kind of infrastructure and moving more to using these kinds of services. But as a first step, this would be how you could do it. And rough costing for this, if you wanted to, you could have a combined domain controller and app server and file server. Sorry, I should say basic DC server and file server. Technically, this wouldn't be like a recommended way of doing it. You'd need to have a few more servers, so you might have 2 domain controllers and a file server separately, but obviously the price goes up. So you could elect to have 3 servers for approximately a 30% cost increase, and there's the monthly cost there. Obviously, this is just a random, a fictitious scenario, so you'd need to plan it all out on the price calculator, how many virtual machines you need and how much resource they need to give you a monthly price. But yeah, this is just an example. So, grants. Nick, do you want to talk a little bit about what you get for free as a not-for-profit?
Definitely. Everyone loves free money, and Microsoft is very, very happy to give it out, especially to great organizations. So you can actually get up to $3,500 in US currency per year in Azure credits, which actually goes a very long way. It does require the customer to have a credit card to be loaded in case you do go over your normal allocation. Of course, it consumes the 3,500 USD first, and then it will charge the credit card. Great, so how do you get it? You do have to register at TechSoup, and you do need a Microsoft tenancy, which we can always assist you with. Or you can also go to nonprofit.microsoft.com and sign in. You'll need to fill in a few questions, of course, your mission statement, what type of organization you are, any details required for your nonprofit status. It does take about 2 to 3 days, but it's generally approved. We've had many different organizations with varying sizes. You don't need to have 50 to 100 staff to use it. You can have about 5 to 10, which is awesome. So it's given pretty easily. You can then apply for the Azure credits within the nonprofit.microsoft.com website. And then, of course, the application for Azure credits, you fill in and generally approved within a few business days. Great, there's a good example of a approved credit. So there are, I guess, different portals, of course, so you can log into the Azure Grant portal and you can claim it, and then you can continue to Azure, then you can set up a subscription and you can just start setting up virtual machines. In fact, with the grant, you have a lot of wiggle room, especially when you're starting out, of course, to spin up a virtual machine, get rid of it when you decide you don't need that, or you can just start playing around with the different services. It's not limited to virtual machines. You can do anything on Azure with it.
Yeah, so any of those lists of 200 plus services can be used, and an IT company can help you use the other ones as well. There's basically any services available through Azure. I don't think you can use it, or you can't use it to pay for your Microsoft 365 subscriptions and stuff like that. Only Azure, not email and that kind of thing. Obviously, the Microsoft 365, you get a separate grant for that, where you can get 10 free business premiums and then a number of business basics as well. But this is strictly for Azure, so this is analytics, computing, networking, storage, or anything that's running on Azure. A few considerations that you should probably consider before jumping in with both feet into Azure is your internet connection good enough at your office? If you're going to be moving and trying to access files through like a virtual private network, you need to have a somewhat decent internet connection. Also, if people are going to be working from home, you need to consider that as well. You may already have a virtual private network from the office. You need to check that it works okay from Azure. And secondly, just because you're getting rid of the servers in the corner or in your network room, doesn't mean that you can just forget about your office's network hardware as well. So you still do need to worry about having a router and a good firewall and switches and Wi-Fi for your office. It's just the data and the applications and that kind of thing isn't stored locally. So yeah, you still need to consider those two things. And there's different strategies, and depending on the answers to these questions, means you can do different things. So if you had a poor internet connection, you could potentially run an RDS server or look into a technology called Azure Virtual Desktop to run everything so people connect into a server then can get to the application. Or if you've got a good internet connection, then you could do it straight across the network to Azure.
Great, so we've got some resources and these will be sent out too. We've got the Azure for NFPs page on Microsoft's website. There is the link to the pricing calculator and of course the TechSoup Azure credit, which can be done directly through TechSoup. Thanks, Alex.
Yeah. So we'll open it up for questions now. If you want to just submit questions through using the questions option box, or and we will answer them.
For sure. Thank you very much, Alex and Nick. So, all right, so the Q&A is started. Feel free to put your questions onto the questions box. And also just a gentle reminder, today's presentation deck plus the PowerPoint will be sent to you in 1 to 2 business days. So it's a very good opportunity to ask whatever questions you have in mind. All right, so looks like we got a questions from Max. Would you like me to just assign to you, Alex?
Yeah, signing's fine. Yeah.
Yeah. So if I'll just ask the questions anyway so that everyone can hear. We have a local server that is nearing end of life. We are already using SharePoint for some things and are happy to move all our files to SharePoint. Does that mean we don't need to worry about Azure?
Yeah, thanks for that question. Yes, potentially you won't need to worry about Azure. So if you can move all your files to SharePoint, that's great. There is a part you still need to worry about: how do people sign into their computers? So if you're using a file server, you're probably going to be using a domain controller on site. So it's kind of a multi-stage thing you've got to do. So the first thing would be to get the files into SharePoint, get anyone's individual files into OneDrive. And if you don't have to worry about an application or anything like that, you can join the computers to Azure Active Directory, Azure Active Directory. So the computers then sign into Azure service with your Office 365 email and password, and then you can access the SharePoint from there. And you wouldn't need to worry about Azure, and you wouldn't need to worry about your file server. When I say you wouldn't need to worry about Azure, you're still technically using Azure, but you're using the software as a service part of it. You're not using the virtual machines part of it that we're talking about in the presentation, which is a very good space to be in because it means there's no servers to maintain. It's very inexpensive, and yeah, that's where we're trying to push all of our customers. But ultimately, yeah, some can, some can't. You sound like you can, which is great.
I think there's one consideration with SharePoint is basically the 1 terabyte of storage that you get allocated for free as part of signing up. If you were to say send 2 terabytes or even more data up into Azure, there might be a better product, for example, Azure Files, that might be able to be used and actually be free.
Lovely, thank you very much for the information. And so Max is asking another question just on top of that. So how do we then handle the backup of files in SharePoint?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, so there's some third-party products out there. There's one that we use is by Datto, which offers infinite retention for a very low monthly price per user, and it's third-party to Microsoft, which can be important if you're worried that Microsoft is suddenly going to disappear. I'm not that worried personally. That would be one. You could also back up on-site to a network-attached storage device. Some of them do that as well. The other thing, if you're trying to do it within SharePoint, there are things called retention policies that you can set on certain types of files, which means that even if people do delete them, someone in the back end can go and pull them out again. So there's a variety of different backup methods. Yeah, the one that's probably easiest to set up would be Datto. Datto software as a service backup, I think, and it's a few mouse clicks and boom, it just records everything forever, separate to Microsoft. So that would be a good thing to check out.
If you can't justify the small monthly fee, it is good. It's great, actually. Microsoft does provide a 14-day window where you can reach out to their support and you can restore an entire SharePoint site up to 14 days in the past. For example, if you're hit by a big crypto ransomware attack, you can get in touch with Microsoft and they'll do it all very quickly for you.
Lovely, thank you. So we believe that answered your questions, Max. and feel free to pop in more questions if you do have any. So we got a questions asking, so what's the difference, and which one do you really recommend, like SharePoint and Azure? What do you think?
Well, it's different. It's different. That got different use cases, I guess. If you're primarily just using Office documents and Word documents, collaborating, you're using Microsoft Teams, maybe you're interested in it, then you can just use SharePoint. There's probably no reason to need traditional file shares that you might be used to, where running on an Azure server. But it's just sometimes there are, like, you're using an application that needs to be able to talk to a file share. That's mainly the main reason for keeping a file share these days, is some applications don't play nice with it. If you don't have any of those problems, then by all means use SharePoint for everything. We personally use SharePoint for everything as an organization, and many of our customers do as well.
Lovely. Thank you very much. All right, so if you have any questions, feel free to pop into the questions box. So on top of that, so Alex, Nate, do you have any additional information that you think is significant that you can share? Like a summary, maybe?
Yeah, I can do my best to summarize everything. So yeah, I guess this webinar is kind of designed so if you've currently got servers that are sitting in the corner or in a data center locally, maybe a company, you can start thinking about what your next steps are, and embracing the cloud in some direction. So if you're an organization that's in that camp, there's kind of two pathways or three pathways you can go. You can either look at paying a whole bunch of money and redoing your local infrastructure, or you can look at moving all that stuff into Azure, or you can look at going serverless. And serverless is probably the dream for most IT companies, and for most of your companies as well, because there's really nothing to break and everything's looked after by Microsoft. But yeah, Azure provides many steps in between that, and it really isn't a case-by-case example. It looks like we've got a question come through though, so I'll read that out.
So
do you want me to read it out?
Yeah, I can do that. We got an interesting question from Rita. It's about the licensing. So when I use Azure for the SQL server, do I need to purchase the SQL license and other license as well?
It depends on what edition of SQL you're running. So I think if you're running the standard or higher version, then yes, you will need to purchase the SQL license, and also the Windows license as well. It can get pricey. If you're using, I think it's the Web Editions database, which has limits on the number of how large the databases can be and a few other things, then potentially you can get away with just getting a normal server and then installing SQL on it. The other thing to check would be, and I could probably show you on the pricing calculator, would be if Azure SQL databases. Am I still sharing my screen?
Yep.
Yeah. Delete that one. Click on it. And this is the database that's running in the cloud that doesn't have like a server operating system. It just gives you a database. And yeah, it's pretty similar. You can choose how big you want the database, because the database is still running on a server, but you just can't see it. And the options are all here. So this is still expensive, but a full SQL license is expensive as well. So if you can somehow get away with the light edition of SQL, that would be the way to go. Otherwise, yeah, you do have to unfortunately pay for it. Or you can look in using Azure Hybrid Benefit if you can get your licenses less expensively elsewhere. That would be another option to reduce the price.
Lovely, thank you very much. So I believe that's answered our questions, Rita. And we got another one from Steve. Hold on, let me assign to you. So he is struggling in find WordPress web server in the calculator, including the web and database aspects.
Hi,
Yeah.
Steve. Yeah, so the WordPress is done through it's got a variety of different things when you set it up. So when you go to all resources, I don't know if I can easily get to it from here, create, and you type in WordPress, it will show you the one put out by WordPress. So this is put out by WordPress as opposed to with Microsoft. And it will, yeah, it doesn't actually tell you here. If you create this and go through and then look at your resources, it creates about 3 different ones. So it creates the app plan, it creates a database, and it creates something else as well, forget. And then you'd be able to look at each one of them independently and work out how much it's going to cost. So database is one of them, and then you'd be able to drop it down to, okay, I want to go, you know, low backup, and the lowest thing to get the price down. And you'll be able to see these options within the WordPress database as well, Steve. So yeah, maybe if you want to email me separate to that, I can give you more of an overview of how the licensing for that works. Not licensing, the cost calculating.
Yes, 100%. So if you would like to email Alex and Nick, feel free to, the email is now on the screen. And this will also be attached in the follow-up email. So don't worry about it. If you lost any contact, you can always reach us out. All right, so looks like that was the last questions we are having. So before we finish, do you have anything you would like to add?
Good from here, Nick. Anything that I've missed?
No, I think you've covered it off pretty well, Alex, and yeah, great job with all that content.
Yep. Go onto Azure website, have a play. There's many different technologies and that kind of thing out there. So yeah.
If you don't have your Azure grant set up, there is a free trial for any new Azure customer, of course. You get $200 free credit. That's great to start playing around with and then figuring out what you want. And then when you're ready to commit, you can go and get your non-for-profit subscription going. And we can definitely assist with that.
Great, fantastic. So, we got a comment. So from Bikram, sorry if I pronounce it wrong. So it's like, thanks guys. So use my MySQL in the app for WordPress. It reduces cost.
Yeah, WordPress is nice because it lets you use a variety of databases. So yeah, that is an alternative to Windows or Microsoft SQL.
Yes, absolutely. All right, so I believe most of you are seeing my screen now. The reason I'm showing this is we actually having one webinar just after this, an hour later. So if you go to training, upcoming webinar, you'll be able to see working with cloud files. So it's kind of quite relevant. So if you would like to know more about like how to work with cloud files by using OneDrive, Teams, SharePoint, feel free to join us just 1 hour later. Go to this link, upcoming webinars, and then you can register for free just an hour later. So apart from the cloud files that we are sharing, we do have another free webinars. It's called Create a Website that Inspires Actions. So this webinar is showing next week on the 5th of April. This is a very engaging and very informative webinar as well, because it really teaches you how to create a website and how to make it really action-taking. Like, we have the speakers from Satya, the Director of Strategic Partnerships from Nation Builder. So again, if you're interested, feel free to click on the training sections, upcoming webinars, and you'll be able to see all the fantastic webinars that are coming up. All right, thank you very much. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Nick, for today's section. It's really great and wonderful to have you all.
All right, thank you very much.
All right.
Thanks for having us.
Of course. Thank you. And then thanks everyone who's come today. And then we'll see you very soon next. Goodbye.